Hyun stood in the empty room and looked around. The walls were plain white. There was a small bed in the corner. 3 bowls sat on the floor. A window showed the stars outside. This was where the new arrivals would stay. He had worked at the orphanage for 2 years now. Station Nexus 7 floated in space between many worlds. Children from all across the galaxy came here when they had nowhere else to go. Hyun had seen many species. Some had scales. Some had feathers. Some glowed in the dark. But he had never seen Velkari cubs before. The door opened behind him. His supervisor, Jiwoo, walked in. She held a data pad in her hands. Her face looked tired. "They arrive in 1 hour," she said. "Are you ready?" Hyun nodded. "What happened to them?" "Transport crash. Pirates attacked their ship near the border zone. The adults fought back. None survived. Only the cubs made it to the escape pod." Jiwoo's voice was flat. She had seen too many sad stories. "They are very young, maybe 5 cycles old in their years. That is like human children at age 6 or 7. How many cubs?" 3, 2 females and 1 male. They have been in medical care for 3 days. The doctors say their bodies are fine. But they do not talk. They do not respond to anyone. They only huddle together and make scared noises. Hyun felt something tighten in his chest. He knew that fear. He had seen it before in the eyes of rescue animals back on Earth. The look that said the world was not safe anymore. "I will do my best," he said. Jiwoo put her hand on his shoulder. "I know you will. That is why I chose you." The other caretakers wanted to refuse this assignment. Velkari are predators. They have claws and sharp teeth. When they are scared, they can be dangerous. But you have never been afraid of the difficult ones. She left him alone in the room. Hyun sat down on the floor and waited. 1 hour passed slowly. Then the door opened again. 2 medical staff walked in. They wore thick gloves and protective gear. Between them, they guided 3 small figures into the room. The cubs were beautiful. Their fur was soft and gray with dark stripes. They had large golden eyes. Their ears were pointed and kept turning toward every sound. They walked on 4 legs, but Hyun could see they might stand on 2 when they grew older. Each cub was about the size of a medium dog from Earth, but there was no beauty in their eyes. Only terror. The medical staff quickly left. The door closed. The cubs pressed themselves into the corner farthest from Hyun. They made low growling sounds. Their small bodies shook. Hyun did not move. He sat very still. He did not look directly at them. On Earth, he had learned that direct eye contact scared frightened animals. It seemed to work the same way here. Minutes passed. Then hours. Hyun just sat. Sometimes he looked at the stars through the window. Sometimes he hummed very quietly. The cubs stayed in their corner. But slowly their shaking stopped. The growling became softer. When the light from the station's artificial sun began to dim, signaling evening, Hyun stood up very slowly. The cubs tensed. He moved to the small food station in the corner. He did not look at them. He took out 3 bowls. He filled them with the special food the doctors had prepared. It looked like meat mixed with something soft. He placed the bowls on the floor far from where he sat. Then he took out a pitcher of juice. It was made from fruits that grew on the Velkari homeworld. The doctor said the smell would be familiar to them. Hyun poured the juice into 3 small cups. The sound of liquid was loud in the quiet room. He placed the cups next to the bowls. Then he went back to his spot and sat down again. The cubs did not move. They watched him with their huge eyes. Hyun took out his own food, simple rice and vegetables. He ate slowly. He did not look at them. He wanted them to see that eating was safe. 10 minutes passed. Then one of the cubs, a small female, crept forward. Her belly was low to the ground. She moved like she expected something to hurt her. The other 2 watched her but did not follow. She reached the bowl. She sniffed it. Then she began to eat very fast like someone might take it away. While she ate, she saw the cup of juice. She saw the pitcher sitting near Hyun. What happened next was fast. The cub left her bowl and ran straight at the pitcher. She knocked into it hard. The pitcher tipped over. Juice spilled across the floor. The cub tried to lap it up directly from the puddle, drinking desperately. The other 2 cubs saw this. Suddenly they ran forward too. All 3 of them were now around Hyun, trying to drink the spilled juice from the floor. They bumped into each other. They made small crying sounds. They licked the floor frantically. Hyun's heart broke a little. He understood. These cubs had learned that resources disappeared, that food and drink could be taken away any moment. They had learned to grab everything immediately, to take what they could before it was gone. Trust was a luxury they could not afford. The other caretakers would have been angry. They would have pulled the cubs away. They would have taught them proper behavior with stern voices and punishment. That was how most species in the galaxy handled children. Quick correction. Strict rules, but Hyun was human, and humans had learned something different long ago. He slowly reached for the pitcher. The cubs froze and watched him. He lifted it carefully. Then he put it down on the floor right in front of them. Not away from them. Not held back as a reward. Just there, available. "It is okay," he said softly. "You can drink." "There is enough." The cubs stared at him. Then they put their faces into the pitcher together. 3 small heads crowded around the opening. They drank and drank. Juice got on their fur. They did not care. Hyun just watched. He did not smile. He did not reach out. He just let them drink until they were satisfied. When they were done, the cubs backed away. They looked at him for a long moment. Then they ran back to their corner and huddled together again. But something had changed. One of them, the male, kept looking back at Hyun. In those golden eyes there was a tiny spark of something new. Not trust yet, but maybe the very beginning of it. A question forming. Could this strange creature be safe? Hyun cleaned up the spilled juice. He filled the pitcher again and left it on the floor where they could reach it. He put out more food. Then he lay down on his mat on the opposite side of the room. The lights dimmed further. Night cycle began. In the darkness, Hyun could hear the cubs whispering to each other in their own language. Scared sounds. Confused sounds. But also, just once, a sound that might have been curiosity. Tomorrow would come. And the day after. And the day after that. Hyun knew this would take time. He knew there would be setbacks and struggles. The other caretakers would not understand his methods. They would say he was being too soft, too patient. But Hyun had learned from Earth's long history. Humans had turned wolves into dogs, wildcats into companions. They had done it not with force but with patience, with the simple act of sitting beside the frightened creature and waiting, offering food and water and asking nothing in return except time. These cubs needed the same thing. They needed someone who would pour the juice and let them drink however they needed to, someone who would not punish them for their fear. Hyun closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would try again, and he would keep trying until 3 frightened cubs learned that the world could be safe again. 3 weeks had passed since the cubs arrived. Hyun sat on the floor of their room with the pitcher in his hands. The morning light came through the window. It was time for breakfast. The cubs had names now. Hyun had named them after Korean words that felt right. The brave female who had approached the food first was Mira. It meant future in an old Earth language that Koreans sometimes used. The male with the curious eyes was Tae. It meant great or big. The smallest female, who always stayed closest to the others, was Bomb. It meant spring and warmth. They watched him from their corner. But now they sat instead of cowering. Their eyes still held fear, but also something else. Interest. Hyun began the morning ritual. He poured juice into 3 cups. The sound was familiar now. He had done this every morning and every evening for 3 weeks. Always the same way. Always calm. Always patient. For 3 weeks, the cubs had rushed at the pitcher. Every single time. They would knock over the cups. They would try to drink straight from the pitcher. They would spill juice everywhere and lap it from the floor. And every single time, Hyun had simply let them. He cleaned up afterward. He never scolded.
He never pulled the pitcher away.
He just poured more and let them drink however they needed. But this morning felt different. Hyun could sense it in the way the cubs sat, in how their ears pointed toward him with focus instead of fear. He placed the 3 cups in a row. He put the pitcher down beside them, like always. Then he moved back to his spot and waited. Mira stood first. She stretched her small body. She walked toward the cups. But she did not run. She moved slowly, carefully. She reached the first cup and stopped. She looked at it. Then she looked at the pitcher. Then back at the cup, Hyun held his breath. He did not move at all. Mira lowered her head to the cup. She drank from it. Not from the pitcher. From the cup. It was a small thing. Just a simple action. But to Hyun, it meant everything. It meant Mira had learned that the juice would not disappear, that she did not need to grab everything immediately. That patience was rewarded here. Tay and Baum watched their sister. They looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. Then they both walked forward. Tay went to the second cup. Baum went to the third. They drank from the cups. When they finished, all three cubs sat together. They looked at Hyun. For the first time, one of them made a sound that was not scared or angry. Mira made a soft chirping noise. It sounded almost like a thank you. Hyun smiled. Good, he said quietly. Very good. Later that day, Jiwoo came to check on them. She stood at the door and watched through the transparent panel. Her eyes went wide. They are drinking from cups, she said. How did you do this? I just waited, Hyun said. I showed them that safety was consistent, that resources would not disappear. They learned on their own. Jiwoo shook her head. The behavioral specialist said it would take months. They said Valkyrie cubs could not learn new patterns so quickly. They wanted to use training collars and reward dispensers. Cubs are not machines, Hyun said. They are children, scared children who watched their families die. They do not need training. They need to know they are safe. Your methods are unusual, Jiwoo said. Her voice was not critical, just thoughtful. Most species in the galaxy believe in quick correction, firm discipline. The Galactic Childcare Standards recommend behavioral conditioning for traumatized young ones. It has been proven effective across hundreds of species. Effective at what? Hyun asked. At making them obey? Or at making them heal? Jiwoo did not answer right away. She watched the cubs play with a soft ball that Hyun had given them. They were still nervous. They still startled at loud sounds. But they were playing. That was something. There is going to be a review, she finally said. The board questions why we allow such unorthodox methods.
They say you are too permissive.
That you let the cubs behave like animals instead of teaching them civilized conduct. They are animals, Hyun said calmly. Just like humans are animals. Just like every species is, under all our technology and culture. You cannot train away trauma. You can only build trust until the trauma becomes bearable. Where did humans learn this approach? Jiwoo asked. Hyun thought about Earth, about the long history of his people. Humans domesticated wolves thousands of years ago. We turned them into dogs. Do you know how we did it? Not by forcing them. Not by punishing them. We did it by sitting near their dens and leaving food. By being patient. By letting them choose to come closer. Generation after generation, we waited. We showed them that humans meant safety and food and warmth. And eventually, they trusted us. That took thousands of years, Jiwoo said. The principle is the same. Trust takes time. But once built, it is stronger than any training. Hyun looked at the cubs. These three have already learned more in 3 weeks than any conditioning program could teach them. They learned it because they chose to. Not because they were forced to. Jiwoo was quiet for a long moment. The review board will not understand this. They believe in data and proven methods. They will say you are wasting time. Then I will show them data, Hyun said. Mira, Tay, and Baum are eating regularly. Their stress markers are down. They are beginning to play and explore. They are learning language at the expected rate. All the measurable outcomes are positive. But your methods do not follow protocol. Sometimes protocol is wrong. Jiwoo looked at him for a long time. Then she smiled slightly. It was a tired smile, but genuine. I will support you at the review. But you need to be ready to defend your approach. The board members are from species that do not understand patience the way humans do. After she left, Hyun returned to the cubs' room. Mira ran up to him immediately. She had become the bravest of the three. She rubbed her head against his leg, the way cats did on Earth. Hyun carefully reached down and touched her soft fur. She did not flinch. Tay and Baum watched this. They were still more cautious. But they came closer too. Not close enough to touch yet. But closer than yesterday. You are doing so well, Hyun told them. He sat down on the floor. I know everything is scary. I know you miss your families. But you are safe here. I promise you are safe. The cubs settled around him. Not touching, but near. That was enough for now. That evening, during dinner time, something new happened. Hyun was pouring the juice as usual. But before he could finish, Tay walked over. The young male cub stood on his back legs, balancing carefully. He reached up with his front paws. He touched the pitcher gently. Hyun understood. He lowered the pitcher so Tay could reach it better. The cub wrapped his small paws around the handle. He tried to pour. The pitcher was too heavy. Juice sloshed but did not pour properly. Hyun put his hands over Tae's paws. Together they tipped the pitcher. Juice poured into the cup. Tae made an excited chirping sound. He looked up at Hyun with bright eyes. Yes, Hyun said. You can help. You are learning. They poured juice into all 3 cups together. Mira and Baum watched with great interest. When they were done, Tae carefully carried his cup in his mouth to his sisters. He set it down between them. Then he went back for his own cup. That night, Hyun made notes in his daily report. He wrote about the progress, about how the cubs were not just learning to drink from cups but learning to help each other, learning to trust, learning that they could have some control over their environment. He knew the review board would not care about these small details. They would want numbers and statistics. They would want to compare his results to standard conditioning programs. They would not understand that healing was not a race. That trust could not be rushed. But Hyun had faith in what he was doing. He had seen it work too many times before. On Earth, humans had learned to read the emotions of dozens of different species. Dogs, cats, horses, birds, even reptiles. Humans had learned to be patient, to watch and wait and respond to each creature's individual needs. This skill had made humans good at something most species in the galaxy struggled with: connecting with beings that were very different from themselves. The galaxy had rules and protocols and standard procedures. These things worked for many situations, but they did not work for broken hearts, for traumatized children, for cubs who had watched their world end and needed to learn that life could begin again. For that, you needed patience. You needed someone willing to pour the juice every day and let them drink however they needed to. Someone willing to wait until they were ready to try the cup. Someone willing to celebrate when they finally did. Hyun looked at the 3 sleeping cubs curled together on their bed. They looked peaceful now. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The review board would question everything. But tonight, 3 small beings were learning to trust again, and that was worth more than any protocol in the galaxy. The alarm went off at dawn. Hyun woke quickly. Something was wrong. He could feel it before he even opened his eyes. The air felt different, tense. He sat up and looked at the cubs. Mirate and Baum were awake too. They huddled together in the corner. Their ears were flat against their heads. Their eyes were wide and alert. Every muscle in their small bodies was tight with fear. What is wrong? Hyun asked softly. The cubs did not answer. They just stared at the door. Hyun stood up carefully. He walked to the door control panel. He checked the station logs. His heart sank when he read the notification. New arrivals. A ship had docked 3 hours ago. Emergency rescue. 5 Kryn hatchlings pulled from a destroyed colony station. They were being brought to the orphanage today. Hyun knew about Kryn. They were a reptilian species. Strong, aggressive, territorial. Their hatchlings were born ready to fight for resources. It was their nature. In their culture, competition made you strong. Cooperation was seen as weakness. The orphanage had Kryn children before. They always caused problems. Not because they were bad, but because their instincts clashed with almost every other species. They saw other children as rivals. They challenged anyone near their food or space, and today they would arrive during morning mealtime. When all the children gathered in the communal eating area, Hyun had kept Mira, Tae, and Baum separate from the other children so far. They were still too fragile, too scared. They needed their safe space. But Jiwoo had told him yesterday that it was time to start integration. The cubs needed to socialize with others. He had agreed. Now he wished he had waited longer. Come on, he said to the cubs. We will go to breakfast together. Stay close to me. The cubs did not want to leave their room. Hyun could see the fear in their eyes, but they trusted him now. When he walked toward the door, they followed. Mira stayed closest to his legs. Tae and Baum flanked her on either side. The communal eating area was large. Many tables filled the space. Children of different species sat in groups. Some had fur. Some had scales. Some had skin that changed colors. Some breathed different air and sat in special environmental bubbles. The noise was loud. Voices, growls, chirps, and sounds that had no earth equivalent all mixed together. Hyun led the cubs to a quiet table in the corner. Other caretakers nodded to him. They had heard about his work with the Velkari cubs. Some thought he was doing well. Others thought he was too soft. But all of them respected that he tried. Hyun placed food bowls on the table. He poured juice into cups. The cubs sat close together. They watched all the other children with nervous eyes, but they ate from their bowls. They drank from their cups. They had learned everything was fine for 10 minutes. Then the doors opened. 5 Kryn hatchlings entered with their caretaker. They were twice the size of the cubs. Their scales were dark green and very thick. Their claws clicked on the floor. Their eyes were cold and calculating. The room got quieter. Everyone watched the new arrivals. New children always changed the dynamic. Everyone wanted to see where they would fit in the social order. The Kryn caretaker, a being named Sung-ho, led them to a table. He brought out their food. Large portions of raw meat, protein supplements, water in big bowls. The hatchlings ate aggressively. They snapped at each other. They made dominance displays. This was normal for them. This was how they communicated. But to the other children in the room, it looked like fighting. Hyun watched carefully. He put his hand near the cubs. "It is okay," he whispered. "They are just different. They are not attacking. That is how they eat." But the cubs did not understand. They saw the aggressive movements. They heard the harsh sounds. Their instincts told them these were predators. Dangerous ones. Bomb started to shake. Mira pressed against Hyun's leg. Tae made a low growling sound in his throat. "Stay calm," Hyun said. "We will finish eating and then leave." But then one of the Kryn hatchlings noticed them. It was the largest one. It stood up from its table. It walked across the room toward them. Its eyes locked onto the cubs' food bowls. Sung-ho called out, "Daehyun, come back." "That is not your table." The hatchling ignored him. It walked straight to Hyun's table. It reached out with its clawed hand toward Mira's bowl. Everything happened very fast. Mira hissed and jumped back. Tae and Bomb scattered. The hatchling grabbed the bowl. Mira lunged forward to protect her food. The prey drive instinct that lived in all Valkyrie exploded to life. She was no longer a scared cub. She was a predator defending her territory. She jumped at the hatchling. Her small claws extended. She scratched at its thick scales. The hatchling roared and swung back. Its arm hit Mira and sent her tumbling across the floor. Tae and Bomb screamed. They rushed forward to help their sister. The other 4 Kryn hatchlings saw this as a challenge. They stood up from their table and moved toward the fight. Their instincts told them to support their clutchmate. The room erupted into chaos. Other children started yelling. Some ran away. Some moved closer to watch. Caretakers rushed forward. Hyun did not think. He moved on pure instinct. He stepped between the cubs and the hatchlings. He spread his arms wide. He made himself as large as possible. "Stop," he said. His voice was not loud. But it was firm. Absolutely firm. The hatchlings hesitated. They looked at this strange 2-legged being who stood in their way. Humans were not common in this part of space. They did not know what to expect. Hyun did not move toward them. He did not make aggressive gestures. He just stood there, solid, unmovable. His body language said clearly, "You will not pass me." Behind him, the cubs scrambled to gather together. They made scared crying sounds. But they stayed behind Hyun. They trusted him to protect them. Sung-ho reached the hatchlings. He grabbed Daehyun by the arm. "Back to your table, now." The hatchlings resisted for a moment. Then slowly they backed away. They returned to their table. But they kept watching the cubs with hungry eyes. Hyun turned around. He knelt down. "Are you hurt?" Mira had a small scratch on her side. Nothing serious. But she was shaking badly. All 3 cubs were terrified. The fragile trust they had built over weeks felt like it might shatter. "Come," Hyun said. "We are leaving." He picked up Mira gently. Tae and Bomb followed close behind. He carried them back to their room. Once inside, he set Mira down and closed the door. The cubs immediately ran to their corner. They huddled together. They made sounds Hyun had not heard since the first day. Scared sounds, trauma sounds. Hyun's heart hurt. All the progress they had made. All the trust they had learned. One incident had brought back all the fear. He sat down on the floor. He did not approach them. He just sat, like he had done on the first day, patient, present, available. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I should not have taken you there yet. You were not ready. That was my mistake." The cubs did not respond. They just pressed against each other and shook. Hyun stayed still. He thought about Earth. about all the animals humans had worked with over thousands of years. He thought about dogs who had been abused, horses who had been mistreated, cats who had gone feral. All of them could heal. But healing was not a straight line. There were setbacks. There were days when old fears came back. The key was to not give up, to stay patient, to prove again and again that safety was real. Hours passed. The cubs stayed in their corner. Hyun stayed on the floor. He did not try to force them to come closer. He did not make promises or use cheerful voices. He just stayed. As evening approached, Hyun stood up slowly. He prepared their dinner. He poured juice into cups. He did it exactly the same way he had done it every day for 5 weeks. The ritual was important. The consistency was important. He placed the cups and bowls in their usual spot. Then he returned to his place and sat down. The cubs watched him. They did not move toward the food. They were too scared. Hyun waited. He ate his own food calmly. He showed them that everything was normal, that nothing had changed, that they were still safe here. 20 minutes passed. Then Mira stood up. She was still shaking, but she walked toward the food. She sniffed it carefully. Then she looked back at Tae and Bomb. She made a soft sound. It seemed to say, "It is okay. Come." Tae and Bomb crept forward. All 3 cubs approached their bowls together. They ate quickly, nervously. But they ate from the bowls. They drank from the cups. When they finished, Mira did something unexpected. She walked over to Hyun. She climbed into his lap. She had never done this before. She pressed her small body against his chest and made a sound that was half purr, half cry. Hyun wrapped his arms around her gently. "You are safe," he whispered. "I will not let anything hurt you." Tae and Bomb watched. Then they came over too. They pressed against Hyun's sides, all 3 cubs seeking comfort from the one being who had never hurt them, who had always been patient, who had always waited. Hyun held them carefully. He felt the weight of responsibility. These small lives depended on him. He had failed them today by exposing them to danger too soon. But he would not fail them again. Later, after the cubs fell asleep, Jiwoo came to his door. She looked sad. "The board is using this incident as evidence," she said. "They say your methods made the cubs weak, that they could not defend themselves properly. That proper conditioning would have prepared them better. Proper conditioning would have taught them to always fight," Hyun said. "To never trust. To see every new being as a threat. Is that better?" The Kryn hatchlings were not hurt. They are already integrated with the other children. The board says that the review room was cold, not in temperature, but in feeling. The walls were gray metal. A long table sat in the center. 5 board members sat behind it. They represented 5 different species from across the galaxy. All of them looked at Hyun with expressions that ranged from doubt to disapproval. Jiwoo sat beside Hyun. She had prepared documents. Data charts, progress reports, everything that could be measured and turned into numbers. But Hyun knew that numbers would not be enough. At the center of the table sat Supervisor Kwon-sik. He was Mantarian, an insectoid species known for rigid thinking and perfect organization. His compound eyes reflected light in strange ways. His mandibles clicked together as he reviewed the reports in front of him. "Caretaker Hyun," Kwon-sik said. His voice came through a translator device. It sounded flat and emotionless. "We have reviewed your work with the Velkari cubs. Your methods are highly irregular. They do not follow galactic childcare standards. We are here to determine if you should be allowed to continue." "I understand," Hyun said calmly. "Let us begin with the basics. When the cubs arrived, you were instructed to use behavioral conditioning protocols. These protocols have been proven effective across 473 documented species. They involve immediate correction of unwanted behaviors, reward systems for compliance, and structured environmental controls. You ignored all of this." "Why?" Hyun took a breath. "The protocols assume the subject is capable of learning through correction. But these cubs were not in a state to learn. They were in survival mode. Their minds were focused only on staying alive. Before you can teach, you must first establish safety." One of the other board members spoke up. She was Vorlaxian, a species with blue crystalline skin. "Safety is established through structure, through clear rules and expectations. Your approach lacked all structure. You allowed the cubs to behave primitively, to drink from the floor like animals." "They are animals," Hyun said. "So am I. So are all of you, under different forms. Being civilized does not mean denying basic nature. It means understanding that nature and working with it. Quan Sik's mandibles clicked louder. This is the problem with human philosophy. You are too emotional, too willing to excuse primitive behavior in the name of empathy. The galaxy requires order, standards. Without these things, chaos follows. And yet, Jiwoo interrupted carefully, the data shows improvement. May I present the findings? She activated a holographic display. Charts appeared in the air. After 5 weeks with caretaker Hyun, the cubs show these results. Stress hormone levels decreased by 67%. Food consumption normalized to expected ranges. Sleep patterns improved. Verbal communication attempts increased from 0 to 43 distinct vocalizations. Physical health markers all within normal ranges. And most significantly, trust responses toward their caretaker increased from 0 to 91% on the standard scale. These numbers are acceptable, another board member admitted. He was Thoraxian, a heavy gravity species that looked like living stone. But they could have been achieved faster with proper conditioning. Time efficiency is important. Resources are limited. Faster is not always better, Hyun said. If you build a foundation quickly but poorly, the whole structure collapses. These cubs needed a strong foundation of trust. That takes time. Time we may not have, Kwansik said. There are hundreds of orphaned children waiting for placement. Every day spent on one case is a day we cannot help others. Your methods are inefficient. My methods are effective. They are primitive. They are human, Kwansik leaned forward. And that is the core issue. Human methods work for human psychology. But these are not human cubs. They are Velkari, a species with completely different brain structures, social patterns, and evolutionary history. You cannot simply apply human techniques to alien biology and expect success. Yet it worked, Hyun said quietly. Did it? Kwansik pulled up another display. Yesterday's incident proves otherwise. Your cubs were attacked by Kryn hatchlings. They panicked. They regressed to feral behavior. They showed none of the resilience that proper conditioning would have built. The Kryn hatchlings, by contrast, were conditioned using standard protocols. They adapted to the communal environment within days. No regression, no trauma responses. They function as expected. The Kryn hatchlings function as aggressive competitors, Hyun said. That is their nature. But my cubs are learning something different. Something harder. They are learning to trust in a universe that gave them every reason not to. Trust is not measurable, Kwansik said. It is not quantifiable. It cannot be put into reports or evaluations. It is a human emotional concept that has no place in efficient childcare. Trust is everything, Hyun said. His voice stayed calm, but something in it made the board members pause. You can condition a being to obey, to follow rules, to perform behaviors, but you cannot condition them to heal. Healing requires trust, and trust cannot be forced. It can only be earned. Philosophy, Kwansik dismissed. Not data. Then let me give you data from Earth history, Hyun said. He had prepared for this. Humans domesticated wolves beginning approximately 15,000 years ago. We studied this process carefully through archaeology and genetics. Do you know what we learned? The wolves who became dogs were not the strongest or the most aggressive. They were the ones who could trust, the ones who could read human emotional states, the ones who could learn patience. This gave them an evolutionary advantage. Today, dogs can read human facial expressions better than any other species, including other primates. They evolved specifically to understand us, and we evolved to understand them. This mutual adaptation created one of the most successful cross-species partnerships in Earth's history. Dogs are not Velkari, the Vorlaxian board member said. No, but the principle applies. Humans have domesticated or worked closely with hundreds of species. Cats, horses, birds, even fish. Each required different approaches, but the foundation was always the same. Patience, observation, and earned trust. We learned to read the body language and emotional states of beings completely different from us. This skill transferred when we went to space and met you. Hyun looked at each board member. Human methods seem primitive to you because they are old. But old does not mean wrong. Sometimes the ancient approach works because it addresses fundamental needs that all conscious beings share: safety, consistency, the knowledge that someone will care for you even when you cannot care for yourself. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Kwansik clicked his mandibles again. Regardless of philosophy, we have a practical problem. You request that the cubs remain separated from other children. You say they need more time. But space is limited. New arrivals come constantly. We cannot dedicate an entire room to 3 cubs indefinitely. I do not need indefinitely, Hyun said. I need 2 more weeks. Then they will be ready for integration. You said they were ready yesterday. You were wrong. Yes, I made a mistake. I moved too fast. But mistakes are part of learning. I adjusted my approach. It will not happen again. How can you guarantee this? I cannot guarantee anything. But I can promise to continue being patient, to continue observing, to continue adapting to their needs. Kwon-sik consulted with the other board members. They spoke in low voices. Hyun could not hear what they said. He looked at Ji-woo. She gave him a small nod of encouragement. Finally, Kwon-sik turned back. We will allow you 2 more weeks. But there are conditions. You must submit daily progress reports. You must achieve specific behavioral milestones. And most importantly, we require a demonstration. What kind of demonstration? Hyun asked. You claim your cubs have learned trust, that they have bonded with you, that this makes them stronger than cubs conditioned through standard protocols. We want to see proof. Bring the cubs here. Let us observe them. If they can demonstrate stable behavior in this stressful environment with strangers present, then we will accept that your methods have merit. Hyun's chest tightened. They are not ready for that. This room would terrify them. Then they are not as healed as you claim, Kwon-sik said. This is the requirement. Demonstrate their progress or we will transfer them to a facility that uses proper conditioning. Hyun wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that progress was not linear. That trust built slowly could not be tested hastily. But he saw the looks on the board members' faces. They had made their decision. This was not a negotiation. It was an ultimatum. When? He asked. Tomorrow morning. 900 hours station time. After the review ended, Hyun walked back to the Cubs' room. His mind raced. How could he prepare them for this? How could he explain that tomorrow they would need to be brave in a way they had never been brave before? When he entered the room, the Cubs ran to him immediately. They had become comfortable with him now. Mira rubbed against his legs. Tae stood on his back legs and put his paws on Hyun's knees. Bomb chirped happily. They trusted him completely. And tomorrow he would have to take that trust and ask them to extend it to strangers, to walk into a room that smelled wrong and felt wrong and stay calm. If they failed, they would be taken away, sent to a facility where they would be conditioned, where patience would be replaced with progress. The morning came too fast. Hyun woke before the lights brightened for day cycle. The Cubs were already awake too. They sensed his nervousness. Animals always knew when something was different. He prepared their breakfast in the usual way. Same bowls, same juice, same ritual. Consistency was important today more than ever. The Cubs ate, but they were distracted. They kept looking at him with worried eyes. Today will be hard, Hyun told them as he always did when he spoke to them. They did not understand most words yet, but they understood tone. They understood that he was being honest with them. But we will be together. That is what matters. At 8:45 station time, Ji-woo came to the door. She wore her formal uniform. Her face showed she was worried too. Are you ready? She asked. No, Hyun said honestly. But we will go anyway. He picked up a small bag. Inside was the pitcher they used every day. The cups the Cubs had learned to drink from. A blanket that smelled like their room. Small comfort items. Not much, but something familiar in an unfamiliar place. Come, he said to the Cubs. Stay close, they left the room together. The Cubs walked pressed against Hyun's legs. Mira led, as she always did. Tae and Bomb followed. They moved through the corridors of the station. Other beings stopped to watch. Word had spread about the demonstration. Many staff members were curious. Some wanted Hyun to succeed. Others thought he would fail. The walk to the review room took 10 minutes. It felt like hours. The Cubs got more nervous with each step. By the time they reached the door, Bomb was shaking. Tae made small whimpering sounds. Even brave Mira had her ears flat against her head. I know, Hyun whispered. I know you were scared. But remember what we practiced. Remember that I am here, the door opened. The review room looked even colder than yesterday. The 5 board members sat behind their table. They watched with expressions that gave nothing away. Several other officials stood along the walls. They held recording devices. Everything would be documented. The room smelled wrong to the Cubs. It smelled like metal and strangers and stress. The lighting was too bright. The space was too open. Everything about it felt dangerous. The cubs froze at the doorway. They pressed themselves against the ground. They wanted to run back to safety. Hyun did not force them. He sat down right there in the doorway. If they could not go further, then this was where they would start. "Caretaker Hyun," Kwon-sik said from the table, "we expect you to bring the cubs to the center of the room. The demonstration cannot proceed from the doorway." "They are not ready to go to the center," Hyun said calmly. "We will start here. If they become comfortable, we will move closer. Forcing them forward will only prove that fear works, not that trust works." Kwon-sik's mandibles clicked with irritation. "This is already showing failure." Conditioned cubs would obey the command to move forward. Conditioned cubs would move because they feared punishment. My cubs will move when they feel safe. There is a difference. Semantics. Truth. The two locked eyes. Or rather, Hyun looked at Kwon-sik's compound eyes. It was hard to read emotion there, but Hyun sensed frustration. The supervisor wanted this to fail. He wanted proof that human methods were inferior. Hyun turned his attention to the cubs. That was what mattered. Not the board, not the politics. Just three small beings who needed him. He opened his bag. He took out the blanket and spread it on the floor. The familiar smell helped. The cubs crept onto the blanket. They huddled together in the center of it. Next, Hyun took out the pitcher. He took out the 3 cups. He arranged them on the floor exactly the way he did every morning. "It is breakfast time," he said in the same tone he always used. "Everything is normal. We are just having breakfast in a different place." He poured juice into the first cup. The sound was familiar. The cub's ears perked up slightly. He poured the second cup. Then the third. The ritual was soothing. It said that despite the scary room and the strangers, some things stayed the same. He placed the cups in front of the cubs. Then he sat back. The cubs did not move. They stared at the cups. They looked at Hyun. They looked at the strangers watching them. The conflict was visible in their eyes. Instinct said to run or fight. But trust said Hyun would not let them be hurt. "What is happening?" the Vorlaxian board member asked. "Why do they not drink?" "They are deciding," Hyun said quietly. "They are choosing whether to trust. This proves they are still too primitive, still driven by fear. No, this proves they can think. They can weigh options. They are not just reacting. They are considering." Minutes passed. The room was silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Everyone watched the 3 cubs sitting on their blanket staring at 3 cups of juice. Then Mira stood up. She took 1 step toward the first cup. She stopped. She looked back at Tae and Bom. Then she looked at Hyun. Hyun nodded slowly. "It is safe." "I promise." Mira walked to the cup. She lowered her head. She drank from it. Not frantically like she had on the first day. Not desperately like she might lose it. Just calmly, like she had learned to do. Tae watched his sister. Then he stood too. He walked to the second cup. He drank. Bom was last. She was always the most frightened. She shook as she approached the 3rd cup. But she approached, and she drank. 3 cubs drinking from 3 cups in a room full of strangers. It seemed like a small thing, but Hyun felt his eyes get wet. Because it was not a small thing. It was everything. It was proof that trust could overcome fear, that patience could heal trauma, that the old human way of sitting with the wounded and waiting still worked, even here among the stars. "They are drinking," the Thoraxian board member said. He sounded surprised. "Yes," Jiwoo said. There was pride in her voice. "They are drinking because they trust. Not because they were programmed to. Not because they fear punishment. Because they chose to trust the one who has always been patient with them." When the cubs finished drinking, something unexpected happened. Mira picked up her cup in her mouth. She walked across the floor toward Hyun. She placed the cup at his feet. Then she climbed into his lap and made a soft purring sound. Tae and Bom followed. They brought their cups too. All 3 cubs pressed against Hyun, seeking comfort after their brave act. Hyun held them gently. He looked up at the board members. "This is what trust looks like." They were terrified. But they did the scary thing because I asked them to. Not because they had to, because they wanted to, because they believe I will always keep them safe. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Kwon-sik spoke. His voice was different, less harsh, almost thoughtful. Caretaker Hyun, have the cubs come to the table. That was not part of the demonstration requirements. I am adding it now. If your methods are truly superior, show us. Bring them closer. Hyun looked down at the cubs. This was beyond what he had prepared them for. But they had already been so brave. Could he ask more? He stood up carefully. The cubs stayed close to him. Come, he said. Walk with me. I will not let anything hurt you. He took one step toward the table. The cubs hesitated. Then Mira followed. Where Mira went, Tae and Bom followed. Step by step, they crossed the room. The cubs walked pressed against Hyun's legs. Their bodies were tense. Their eyes were wide. But they walked. When they reached the table, Kwansik leaned forward. His insectoid face came closer. To the cubs, he must have looked like a nightmare. All hard angles and strange movements and alien smells. Bom whimpered and tried to run. Hyun put his hand on her gently. Stay, you are safe. Kwansik extended one of his limbs slowly. The claw at the end opened. In it was a small treat, something the cubs liked. I mean no harm, Kwansik said. His translator made his voice soft. The cubs stared at the treat. They looked at Hyun. It is safe, Hyun said. He is offering you food. Like I do. Mira crept forward. She sniffed the treat. Then very carefully she took it from Kwansik's claw. She ate it quickly and scurried back to Hyun. Kwansik offered treats to Tae and Bom. Both cubs approached. Both took the treats. Both returned to Hyun's side. Remarkable, Kwansik said. He sat back. He looked at the other board members. I have never seen Velkari cubs accept food from a stranger, especially not in a stressful environment, especially not from a species they have never encountered before. The conditioning protocols do not teach this, the Vorlaxian member admitted. They teach obedience and structure, but not this kind of flexible trust. This is what I tried to explain, Hyun said. Trust is transferable. The cubs trust me absolutely. Because of that trust, they can extend it to others when I tell them it is safe. This makes them adaptable. This makes them stronger. Kwansik was quiet for a long time. His mandibles moved but made no sound. Finally he spoke. I have worked in childcare for 40 cycles. I have seen thousands of cubs, hatchlings, larvae, and young ones from hundreds of species. I have believed that efficiency and structure were paramount. That emotional approaches were wasteful. But today I have seen something I did not expect. He paused. I have seen genuine healing. Not just behavioral compliance. Actual recovery from trauma. These cubs were broken. Now they are learning to be whole, and they achieved this not through neural conditioning or chemical adjustment or any of the proven galactic methods. They achieved it because one human sat with them and poured juice and waited. Kwansik looked directly at Hyun. Humans are frustrating. You are inefficient.